Right, so good evening everyone. Before we start the meeting, can I ask members and officers who are here physically to mute any electronic devices in order to avoid any feedback? And can I ask any remote participants to keep their camera and microphone off unless they wish to speak, and ideally not to use the camera facility at all, as this can affect the quality of the meeting. Please be advised that the meeting may be recorded and that data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may also be added to the Council's website. Any members accessing the meeting remotely should use their SPC or KCC laptop to participate virtually. If you join using the link on the website or on a mobile and tablet device, it's not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as in remote attendance. So, can I welcome everyone to this Environment Committee meeting this evening, including any visiting members attending remotely and any members of the public. The following staff are in attendance. Firstly in person, Martin Cassell, Head of Environment and Leisure, and for Democratic Services, Kelly McKenzie, and attending remotely we have Environmental Services Manager Alison Andrews and Billy Attaway from Democratic Services. In terms of the emergency evacuation procedure, if we do have to evacuate the room, when you go out of these doors, if you turn right, you'll come to the first fire exit. So, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Nick Hampshire, substitutes Councillor Peter Martington, Councillor Anne Hampshire, substitutes Councillor Cameron Bear, Councillor Denise Knight and Councillor Oliver Eakin, and his substitutes Councillor Mike Worthing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. So we've got two sets of minutes to approve. The first are the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of June 2022. Can we confirm that we are approving those minutes, please? Thank you. And the second set of minutes are the minutes from the extraordinary meeting held on the 12th of August 2022. Can we agree that is a correct record, please? Thank you. So item 5 on the agenda is the forward decisions plan. I'm going to ask Martin to just introduce this item and make any comments that he wants in relation to the forward plan.
Actually, it should be a fairly simple one, not many changes, in fact no changes from the last meeting. What I would say, just taking the opportunity through you, Chair, to update the group and thank the group for their response on email with regards to the Levelling Up Parks Fund, which obviously that was a time-sensitive decision that would have been taken at the previously cancelled meeting. So I'm pleased to update you today because today is deadline day. I've pressed the button on submit for the funding to the Levelling Up Parks Fund, so that has gone forward for Barton's Point, Coastal Park in Sheerness, and we now await a decision hopefully within the next month or so. So just a thank you to everyone for responding and supporting the recommendation. Happy to take any questions on the rest of the plan.
Okay, I can't see any questions at the moment, so are members happy to note the, sorry, Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wonder whether it would help on the column that says date of meeting, whether it would be helpful to put it as the 3rd of November or the 19th of December or the 2nd of March or the 11th of January, rather than just leaving it as November.
Absolutely.
And the second question is the air quality action plan is down to early 2023. You may not be in a position to be specific about that, but are we calling early? I'm assuming that early 2023 is probably after the local elections. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the protocol. Who to answer? It's not my area, but my understanding is that the reason that it's slightly ambiguous at the moment is because obviously the first one is for it to go out to consultation. Depending upon the response that we get on consultation, we might need only a very short time because there's not very many comments, or we might need a longer time. My assumption from speaking with Tracy Beattie is that it will be pre the end of the financial year, so before the end of March.
I think it's worth noting it's also on the agenda for November, isn't it? An early draft or draft of it, isn't it?
Yeah, so it will come for approval to go to consultation in November, and then it will come back having been out to public consultation. I get early, slightly ambiguous, 2023, certainly in the first few meetings of the environment.
Okay, so are we happy to note this item? So item 6 on the agenda is the Roads and Streets cleansing contract update. So I'm going to ask Martin to take us through this report and then we'll open it for questions and discussion.
Thank you, Chair. So I think very much this report was taking on board comments from the last committee in June, where people felt that there had been a period of time since an update on the waste contract. So very much wanting to detail the process that, and also the fact that it had been caught between the two government structures, obviously cabinet to committee systems. So what we wanted to do was through this report detail the process that we've taken over the last few years, and then give you an update since that June cabinet meeting, where many of the decisions were taken. So the report is as detailed an update as I can give. Talks about how members have been involved through the process, engaged through the process, but it's a good opportunity to update on what's happened since those meetings. So Cabinet made a number of decisions in June 21 that allowed the officers to go off and progress the tender with some certainty. Clearly, this is the biggest contract that the council has. It's complicated in normal times, but we certainly faced some challenges over the last couple of years with the process. So hopefully I'll be able to update on a number of those tonight. Some of those: driver shortage, fuel shortage, the economic changes, and obviously a fair amount of change potentially coming through waste legislation and a revitalisation of the industry in years to come. What that's done is created quite an amount of uncertainty with the private sector, and therefore that's why we've had a number of challenges to work through during the tender process. So at that cabinet meeting, a number of strategic objectives were set. Very much what we've tried to do is take the good practice of the existing contracts. We've been in contract with the Mid Kent Partnership, with the contractor through the Mid Kent Partnership for the last 10 years. So it's very much using the current contract as a basis, whilst focusing on picking out the elements that we took from the resident survey, from the area committees when we spoke to ward members about things that needed improvement, and hopefully, as I say, without going through the report in full detail, some of those are detailed in there for you tonight. Since we last met, which was the extraordinary committee meeting, you'll be reminded that all of the contractors that have taken part in the process have said that the availability of vehicles is very difficult and wouldn't have been able to have been met by the October 23 deadline. So we went through the contract extension process. I'm pleased to say we have a signed contract extension with the current contractor that will take us through to the 23rd of March 24. So as reported in the extraordinary committee meeting, and that will certainly help with a number of things. It will help us in terms of maybe seeing out some of these challenges that are facing the industry at the moment, and it will certainly help with the delivery of a full suite of vehicles that will mean we can start the new specification all at once. So we are now formally in the final tender stage with final submissions in October. Since writing this report, where we put the 18th of October, it's actually the 26th now. We've given a couple of days extra to the bidders to focus on a few minor changes we made at the end. So I think key tonight is obviously conversation. You've got myself, you've got Alistair online for all the difficult questions. So the reality is, I'll leave it there just to say the recommendation is, because we recognise the importance of the waste contractor, every single member of the council, I'm sure it's the thing that comes through your mailbox the most. We feel that it's right to do a further update wider than the Environment Committee. And with your approval tonight, we'll clearly the report as written for the original report said we'd hope to do that early October. If you're in agreement tonight, I would work with Democratic Services to find a date, ideally before the end of the month, so that we can keep the momentum going on that. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I mean, I found the report clear and concise and very helpful. Can I just emphasise, of course, we're in the middle of a tendering process, so there may be things, particularly around the finances, that Martin's unable to answer. And can I remind you that the recommendation, what the recommendation is, so it's about moving forward to having a couple of briefings. But I'm going to open it for questions to Martin and Alistair. Councillor David.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn the microphone. Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I fully agree with this. I think it's important for us, all the members, to be engaged with this, as you say, it's a big contract. Given the problems we're having with the location at the moment, are you planning to make this a virtual, or would you be looking at going externally to have it at another region?
Certainly when the report was written,
yeah.
the intention was to have two face-to-face meetings, one in the afternoon, one in the evening. I think clearly with the hybrid technology, we would have made them available online anyway. So from my point of view, we can work on that, but I'm happy to take views from committee whether you prefer it just to be virtual or whether you'd like it to be hybrid.
I mean, if I come back, I know the LGA are going to be campaigning to try and allow decisions to be made remotely again, purely because, you know, this the environment committee, you've got people coming all the way from the island to a meeting that may not last no longer than 30 minutes. So I think if there is an opportunity, I mean, I like face-to-face as well, but in this instance, it may be beneficial to make it a virtual meeting, given the fact it'd be difficult to get 47 people in here comfortably. if they were all to attend, things like that. Thank you, Chair.
I should also say we're planning to, for my sins, I will talk to a video on some of the slides, so anyone not able to make it, there'll be a recording
Yeah.
available, so they can listen.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I've got councillor Simmons and then councillor Winkles.
Yeah, I'm on a different subject, Chairman, so if Councillor Winkles is on the same
Is
subject.
it related to?
Yeah, I will base it on Councillor Davey. I think the modern technology now is quite ideal to have it done on remote from home. So I'm quite happy to go on
Okay, I'm not sure, we're making a proposal, councillor Davey, or just making
No, I think I wasn't making a proposal, I was just speaking to Martin on how we were going to go forward, and obviously that'll be down to him to facilitate our group with democratic services.
okay, well, we can perhaps come back to the formal meeting a bit later on, but, councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to focus on section 2.7 of the report for a minute or two, if I may. And this is the removal from the new contract of the curbside collection of various items, small electrical equipment, textiles and batteries. And I wonder why that has been removed from the future contract. I don't accept that it's easy to use alternatives. It's not always convenient to use the household recycling centre, and it's probably encouraging people to get in their cars to take stuff there. I don't know about charity textile collections. And most of the supermarkets have now removed their bottle banks and other, clothes banks and that sort of thing. The reason for my concern is that I think that the vast majority of people will just put it in their green bin, I can't be bothered to seek out an alternative, so I'm just going to put it in my green bin, and it will affect our recycling, and also, I mean, it's a valuable resource. There's precious metals in some small electrical items which can be retrieved, and also in batteries. I'd like some background on that, please, Chairman.
Okay, would you like to explain the rationale for that?
Yeah, I might need Alistair to come in at certain points of this, but so I think it's safe to say the current system is not particularly efficient or reliable. So we often get complaints from residents that the items are being left, or they supposedly are put back into the bins by operatives or other complaints. The reason for that is the current bin lorries were designed in a way that they had a cage underneath. To take those items, they have to be separated from on the refuse or the recycling, so they can't go into the unit themselves. And quite simply, they don't have enough capacity for doing that. So after the first few items have been taken, the cages are full, they're not able to take them. So the contractors have been very honest during the tender process that that isn't a workable solution in their mind, because it adds additional hassle into that. So they've been very upfront about that. So we shared a number of similar concerns to you, Councillor Simmons, and that's why we've explored that through the process. It's safe to say textiles is probably our biggest contaminant already in waste streams. So, and the reason that we get rejected loads at the recycling centres is more often than not because someone's thrown a great big pillow or a duvet within their recycling. And we believe that the current model of put it in a bag next to your bin confuses people more, because actually it goes a lot, we're seeing a lot of it going in the recycling bin. So We actually think there's a counter argument to say that contamination will go down because it will be a much clearer picture to say, no, we can't take these items. We believe that the issue with the value on the items, that's such a fluctuating picture. So one year textile is valuable, the next year it's not, and so you can't convince contractors that it's a good income stream in order for them to collect, and so therefore we as taxpayers will continue to pay higher prices for the removal of that because they won't take the risk. So weighing all of that up, we decided it's a system that doesn't currently work. We could end up paying a lot more for its inclusion. So for instance, we looked at could it be a position where, like a bulky waste, you could book a recycling or a textile service, but again, that's extra people driving around, extra cost doing that. What we have agreed because you're quite right, although we believe there are other methods of getting rid of these materials, and we've mentioned them in the report, we recognise that won't suit everybody, so what we have said is that as part of the bulky waste scheme, so it won't be a paid-for service, but if you book a bulky waste scheme, you can add those items to your bulky waste collection free of charges as well. So again, just trying to get all of the potential solutions to design those issues out. So that was our thought process so far. It's certainly been a well-considered debate amongst the officers across all three councils about what the right thing to do is.
Thank you. Response?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I accept the argument that it may reduce contamination, but I still think it will increase the amount which goes in the green bin. I just wonder how many people do book bulky waste collections and whether they'll add it to that or not. Who knows?
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Beard.
Yeah, thank you. Mine was just on, right at the bottom of the agenda on the background papers. You've got link to contract documents on the procurement portal. That link just takes you to the login. It doesn't actually take you to the procurement opportunity. I've got a login for Proactis and I've logged in and I've looked at Maidstone, Ashford and Swale and cannot find it on there.
I knew you would be the eagle eye because I did it the same, Cameron. So apologies for that. When we were looking previously, because it's now a closed tender in terms of we've been through a selection process, it's not publicly viewable. So my apologies for that. I thought it was. That's an error on my part, and apologies for leaving a link there that didn't work. So.
As they are contract documents, are we able to review them or are they available?
Absolutely. There's no reason to say not. I would say they're massive documents. They're very big. We haven't involved members in that process of the actual documentation because our view is very much in the tender process. It's about members, as per the policy, set the strategy, and then it's down to the officers of all three councils. And I should say that Alistair and others have sat through multiple day-long meetings, scouring every line of every document. There's about 30 or 40 documents in the suite of contract documents. And of course, being a competitive dialogue process, those documents have changed throughout that process. So where some of the contractors say, do you really mean this in said document, or what's the implication of that? And that's part of the competitive dialogue process. So, you know, they've been continually moving contracts throughout. So absolutely nothing to stop you seeing them. Happy to send through a specification to anybody. Whether or not you want to see all of the documents, as I say, there's things that relate to, there's the contracts, T's and C's, there's then performance mechanisms, how we make payments, how we sort out inflationary increases and various other tips. So there's a lot of detail in there, but happy to share.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
Mr. Chair, I know we've gone off a little bit off the agenda there because we're kind of only discussing whether or not we have members' briefings. I'm sure these questions will come up again. But I would just like to come back to Councillor Simpson because that was one of the paragraphs I looked at. And being a bit of an eco warrior for quite some time, I do go out my way to walk bags of textiles down the local charity shops, etc. The only thing I would ask a bit, the website could be updated because last time I looked, that was still on the website, that you could send out goods to be collected. And you're right, it was one of the complaints I got, was that they'd say they wouldn't take the stuff and then the vehicle was full already with other goods. And obviously going forward, when the new contract comes into place, or even before then, maybe some columns coming up on what residents are asked to do, and also the possibility of maybe some local sites where people can maybe drop stuff off that aren't the supermarket car parks, etc. Maybe in our own car parks, certainly for textiles, because as you say, they're one of the biggest problems. And there's decent money to be had generally. All the charity shops take textiles for recycling or for whatever they do, they get money back for them. Yes, thank you.
Do you want to comment on that?
So just to clarify, we are still collecting in the same way. So all the way through to March 24,
Okay.
we and textiles. Sorry, I used the term we. I'm not assuming that everyone knows. So, and I don't even know the acronym, but it's basically small electrical items. So your toaster, your kettle, your little radio, or things like that that you can't put in there. So it's small electrical items, batteries and so what I would say is if you've got residents in that situation where it's not being collected, we are working with the contractor to be more proactive around when they can't take them because they're full, leaving a note or putting a hanger on the bin in order to let people know, put it out next time and we'll be able to take it. But yeah, absolutely recognise that. In terms of comms and there will be an absolutely massive comms campaign when we're in that transition. So between making the contract award in January and the following March, we will go on quite we've put a reserve aside for some key comms around some of the changes because it may well involve day changes for people, it may well involve certainly the change to we and textiles, various other bits. So there will be a transition phase where we start to prepare people. As I mentioned in the report, where we've been trialling food waste collections and alternatives for those in properties that can't have wheelie bins, and some changes there as well. Comms will be key to this.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you, Chair. Martin, just now you mentioned as part of the specification, inflation and how that will be dealt with. I mean, clearly we're in a situation where inflation is having a massive effect. Presumably you're using the wisdom learned over the last few months about inflation to best protect the council and the ratepayers' interest in the contract that's being drawn up. And I don't expect an answer now, Chairman, but it may be a question that gets raised during the briefing. So perhaps you notice that the question might turn up. I think it's quite an important one. So suddenly to see 10% of a contract value being added because of something over which we have no control locally.
Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I won't comment on the specifics because obviously we are in that live tender process, but I think it's fair to say it's been exercising our minds a lot, and certainly Lisa's as Section 151 officer. Clearly, during a negotiation stage, it's also been exercising the contractors' minds as well, because their boards won't be prepared to take the risk on certain things if we see these unusual prices. So yeah, it's fundamentally been one of the key discussion points during the tender process. We have now set a rate, and it's it's the rate that we think keeps all parties happy, but we will see. Because I don't have the crystal ball, unfortunately. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is, first of all, involved in this, I apologise. One, I agree with what you're saying about the awkward elections, because I watched the feeding in myself, and I have also noticed by trying to do a bit of election going on. The other crew on the other side of the road just felt it creates a delay if you go along as well, so I'm all for the different form of election. Just one question I'd like to ask is, I noticed you mentioned about the procurement of the vehicles being a problem, and that what makes you think that you'd be able to do it better than the contractor could? That's one part of it. So, have you looked at the difference in cost for the council as leasehold, as against outright purchase? Sometimes the money coming back at the end of the lease is more beneficial than trying to resell your own vehicle. That's the only point I'd like. Thank you.
Thank you. Two really pertinent questions. So what I'm pleased to say is that all of the bidders are comfortable with the council supplying the capital for the vehicles, but we still get the advantage of their purchasing power. So we get the best of both worlds. So we get a cheaper rate of borrowing through local borrowing than you would on the private market, but we still get that purchasing power of those that are buying 200, 300 refuse trucks a year. So we get the best of both worlds. It also takes away some risk at the moment on this contract. We don't own the vehicles, so we were very much beholden to the contractor when we were discussing the extension. So we believe that it removes a further risk. So that's why we think we can do procurement better, because we're getting their benefit of purchasing, but at our rate of borrowing.
That was the bit I missed. You were going through the same purchase procedure, so I missed that.
Leasehold versus purchase, absolutely. There's not a huge market for 26-ton refuse vehicles on the leasehold market, and certainly the hire market is vastly competitive at the moment, because everybody's trying to extend their contracts and avoid having to bid in this uncertain time. So if authorities had a 5-10 year extension built into their current contracts, they're certainly taking that opportunity at the moment. Certainty, away the uncertainty. But again, recent events have meant that the cost of that borrowing may well have been a bit more than it was a few months ago. But the reality is it can go the other way again really quickly, and there's a long time between now and March. So we will try and take that again and get my crystal ball out and choose when is the right time to. Well, actually, I'll let Lisa do that when it's the right time to borrow that money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Just on that, I'm assuming that perhaps you can't give us any idea on what the cost of this is. That's quite a substantial capital cost for the council. Will you be able to tell us at the briefing how many vehicles are involved for each authority, but certainly our authority, quite a substantial capital upfront cost.
So I can't tell you the capital sum at the moment, and I can't tell you the number of vehicles, because obviously that depends differently. Each of the contractors will be bidding on a different number of vehicles, and that will come out in the evaluation process. So obviously can't talk about that. So if the briefing is pre-close of tender, that position will remain the same. The December report will absolutely have that, Councillor Simmons, and clearly in order to put that level of capital, because you're right, it's not a small amount of capital, in order to put that into capital programme, there'll be a policy and resources committee decision based around that. What I can assure you is the cost of us providing that capital is vastly below the cost of the contractors
If I could just carry on, Chairman, it's a similar thing. In the section 2.4, with the objectives, it says reducing the carbon footprint of the service. And I'm assuming that is the use of electric vehicles rather than diesel, because they're currently diesel. And I'm guessing that an electric waste truck is going to be considerably more expensive than a diesel one. I don't know whether that's a safe assumption to make. And the other thing about reducing the carbon footprint of the service is this: we're in a three-way contract with Ashford and Maidstone, and there's an area somewhere between Frinstead and Warren Street where the three authorities meet. It's always struck me that we should have probably more cooperation between the three authorities, so that the swale lorries don't trundle all the way up to Otterden to collect the waste, which could be easily collected by an Ashford queue. I know there is some crossover, but it strikes me that as this is the second time with a Mid-Kent Waste Partnership, that is an area that ought to be explored more. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, do you want to tackle those?
Yeah, I feel guilty. I haven't given Alistair a chance to speak yet, but he will tell me when I'm going wrong.
I'll find something. I'll find a question for him in a minute.
I answered the capital question. So carbon footprint. Again, it's difficult. So we haven't gone out and specified you must provide 26 electric refuse trucks, or that you need to do this to reduce your carbon footprint. We put it out to the market and said, look, this is a key priority for all three authorities, actually, not just Swale. What are the solutions that you can bring? Because that's a competitive nature. So I wouldn't always make the assumption that it will be a more expensive option, because clearly there is an element of competitiveness amongst the contractors as well, wanting to win the contract. So it doesn't always immediately say one vehicle costs X and the other vehicle costs Y, and that's the difference you see. I think you partly answered your own question in saying that there are other ways other than just vehicles, and clearly route optimisation is massive for reducing our carbon footprint. So you're right, we do have some cross-border operations, so there are Ashford and Maidstone depot vehicles that come in and collect across the Swale boundary and vice versa, depending upon the rate. They all have very fancy software systems that a computer tells them what the right route for that day is, and various other things. And actually, that's one of the big things that the contract will bring, we hope, compared to the contract 10 years ago, is that technology that can be used in CAB. So the data will be a much richer data position, but for no alternative cost, because it's just industry standard now that they provide that. So we are seeing some benefits of having more real-time data, certainly from all presentations that we've seen through the tender process. So clearly you could do a lot more. So if we did specify 26 electric refuse trucks out there, we'd need to spend lots of money on infrastructure and charging. We would need to do lots of different things. So that's why we very much left it to the contractors to look at all of those measures, not just in their part of the operation, but in their supply chains and various other bits. So there is an evaluation question based around that. Obviously, we will tease that out during the
So we're running out of questions. So Oh.
I could keep going for an hour, but
Right, well, I don't think, yes, I don't think anyone else will be very happy with Councillor, yeah, Councillor Beard.
Just picking up on that point, that we were told that we were trying an electric vehicle, or Biffa were trying. Any feedback?
Yeah, we've had some good feedback. It's doing a tour around the country of Biffa's various contracts, and so they're building up a richer position in terms of nationally. It did a lot of our services really good. They were teaming. So this was, for those not aware, this was an old refuse vehicle that was converted into an electric vehicle, yeah, it proved that, you know, what they're trying to do is prove a lot of the misconceptions of it'll only last an hour of charge, it won't be able to carry heavy garden waste. So we used it during the trial. It was with us, Alistair, remind me, I think 3 or 4 weeks in the end, and we used it. Go on.
It was here for, I think it was longer than that in the end. And one of the comments that the drivers did feedback was their awareness of what's going on around them, because it's so much quieter that they felt it was far safer, because they were far more aware of what's going on around them whilst they're completing their work.
Yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
Oh, okay. I'm going to look for someone to propose the 2 recommendations. I can't see any reason why we can't take them together. Councillor Valentine to propose, Councillor Daly as the seconder. Are we all happy to agree? Yes, agree. And can we note Councillor Davis' kind of initial comments about can we make the briefings as accessible to members as possible, whether that's hybrid or virtual. Absolutely. Okay, thank you. I don't think we've got anything else on the agenda, so I'll bring the meeting to a close.
Thank you. Thank you.